So this next presentation was kind of inspired when I was at Game Developer Conference earlier this year. I was listening to Steve Moretsky and Dave Roll and Juan Grill do their social games or free-to-play games year in review, which they'll actually be doing here at this show as well. But one of the things that Dave did during his presentation is he kind of did a deconstruction of the Saga series that I thought was kind of interesting, if completely fictional, since he doesn't actually work at King.com. So I called up King.com and I said, you know, Dave had some interesting insights on what might have happened with the Saga series and how it came into being. Why don't you guys come and tell the story about what actually happened? And Jong Woo actually agreed to come and do that today. I'm super interested to hear what he has to say, especially since King.com is certainly the largest casual to social free-to-play success story that I can think of. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Jong Woo with a quick note. About this time tomorrow, actually a little bit earlier, King.com is also going to be doing a consumer panel, which I'm moderating. And you'll have an opportunity to come and talk to people who are real consumers, not game industry consumers, but real consumers about the way that they play games like Candy Crush Saga. With that, I'll turn it over to Jong Woo, and thank you very much for being here today.
Awesome. Thanks very much. All right, so hi everybody. I'm Jong. I head up business development for King, and you know, like David said, I'm asked to come here and just sort of give you guys sort of an inside look on the Saga series. So sort of how we came to decide on some of the design elements or what have you around the Saga games that are on Facebook and then on mobile. So given sort of the recent success of Candy Crush Saga, I get approached quite a bit. I think a lot of King employees get approached quite a bit. You know, whether it be sort of industry people or personal friends, family, media even, just sort of asking us, you know, what's the secret formula of why so many people are playing this game and why people continue to be engaged in this game? And you know, is there like some, I don't know, crazy like formula behind it? Is it, you know, locked in a vault somewhere where you have to go like all Ocean's 11 to unlock it? You know, I'm basically here to say that yes, there is a formula, and no, it's not a secret. So you know, again, it's no secret that, you know, we are in the games industry, and the games industry is hit-driven, very similar to movie studios and the film industry. And you know, we all sort of try to work towards what that formula for repeatable success might be. And you know, Clive was up here right before me and talking about sort of the formula that the DNA has around sort of repeatable success. And so all game companies, all sort of companies or businesses who are in this sort of hit-driven business are looking for that formula. You know, I mean, the movie industry does it. This is how Hollywood does it, right? Yeah, they mash it all up. Right, so you know, for us, you know, I wanted to just sort of walk through what our formula for success has been for the Saga series, and you know, it's not something that we came up with overnight. It's something that came together through a lot of different experiments and iterations, and you know, a lot of failures as well. But you know, here's sort of, I'll walk you through sort of what that formula looks like in a nutshell. It's really a three-step vetting process. So King.com is a website that King has been operating for the past 10 years. And it's basically a casual game portal where people come and play simple 2-3 minute flash game experiences, you know, with friends, you know, competitively in tournament styles even. And so at King, we have teams of 2 or 3 developers whose sole job is to just create simple flash games for that site. And literally, we are creating at least one new game a month, and we're launching it on that site. And so not only is that King.com site a thriving business in itself, it also is a great test bed for us. We've got players who are playing that game. We can measure whether the people like it, whether they hate it, you know, how much time they're spending with it. Those are all things that we measure. And really what we task these people who are creating these simple flash games is, hey, go and innovate. Go and push the envelope from a game design standpoint, from a game mechanics, from a gameplay standpoint. You know, really try to be sort of out there. And it's so, you know, we're okay with failing. in this. Like Clive said, if you fail and you learn, that's always a positive. And this allows us to fail not only quickly, but also very cost effectively, because we only have 2-3 people working on it, right? So that's sort of like phase one in terms of our vetting process. Now, the games that do really well there and sort of have high retention, high engagement with this audience, then those games become sort of candidates to be, I guess, what we call sagafied. And sort of that sagafication then happens where we then take that core game mechanic, that core gameplay, and we sort of build out a full-blown social experience behind it. So adding in and integrating the social and viral hooks into the game, creating sort of all the different modes of play that you find in the Saga games, the level-based progressions and the power-ups and the boosters and all those types of things. And then that game gets put up on Facebook. And then we use that game and we iterate on it. We look at the data and we're sort of fine-tuning it constantly. And that is sort of phase two. Now, phase three then at that point is those games that do really well on Facebook as a Saga game, they get brought over to mobile. And the mobile version of those games are all built natively. We want to make sure that it's not just a port of the game, that the interaction with that game is still native to that platform or that device that you're using. But it still needs, from a gameplay standpoint, to be still core to what the Facebook experience was. And then the really big thing for us was around cross-platform synchronization. So we then enable players to seamlessly sort of play our Saga games on their desktop, on their mobile devices, and we synchronize the player's progression, your social graph, your friends, in-game achievements, in-game purchases, so that literally if you, left your office after having played level 24 and you were on the bus ride home and you wanted to continue that torture, you could totally just do that and pick up your mobile phone and pick up right where you left off. So those are some of the important design elements that are part of the cross-platform strategy of ours. And this is sort of the formula that we are currently employing now to build social games, both on Facebook as well as on mobile. And so games like Candy Crush, games like Bubble Witch, games like Pet Rescue, Farm Heroes, those games were all conceived as those 2-minute flash games initially. So again, this formula didn't happen overnight. We initially, when we first decided to sort of throw our hats into the Facebook ring, I think we took the King.com casual game portal and we just brought it over to Facebook, and we had some good learnings on that. And then we decided, hey, maybe players needed a deeper, engaging experience with a single game, so we brought a bingo game over, and it was called Bingo Adventures. And it was sort of a level-based progression as you're going through a map, but it was synchronous, real-time multiplayer bingo, and there were issues with that. So, what we then decided to do was sort of iterate on this, and the advantage that we had was that we were kind of late to the Facebook game, right? Our first Facebook game didn't launch till 2011, and there were already a bunch of players on the Facebook platform creating games. And so we had the benefit of being able to see what the people who preceded us did on the platform, did well on the platform, and maybe didn't do as well on the platform, and let that sort of also drive a lot of the decisions or learnings that we had. But one of the key principles within King, and this is the principle that dictates everything that we do, every design decision, every even business decision that we make, it really is that, sorry, that's the mobile version. It's really that the player is king, right? We want to build a really great game that optimizes for player experience, right? We want to make sure that people want to come back and play our games again and again and again and again and again. And every time they come back and play the game, it's rewarding, it's fun, it was a good time investment for them. So, using this principle, we started to make a couple design decisions as we were coming towards this sort of Saga framework. And one of the design things was about winning, right? So the ultimate positive feedback and the ultimate positive reward you can give to a player when they're playing a game is to give them the opportunity to win, right? There's nothing more satisfying when playing a game than winning the game, right? Now, there are a lot of resource management type of games out there, like whether you were building a city, a zoo, an aquarium, a farm. Those types of games were, at that time when we were first going out into Facebook, those games were prevalent on the top charts. And we sat around and we said, so how do you win these games? And it wasn't really clear to us what the win condition was when you were playing these types of resource management games. So it's important for us, as we thought about player experience, to create concrete, real win conditions that everyone can understand very clearly, right? And then also to provide that feedback to you in a way that was immediate and repeatable, right? So we created this level-based progression where literally every level takes 3 minutes to play, and you immediately get the feedback whether you've won or lost. And when you win, you're rewarded because you can continue playing. You're never locked out of the game if you win, right? So this idea also of the life-based system was also sort of a design decision that we made around this idea of winning, right? We wanted to reward players for winning. And a lot of the games that were out in the market at that time, because maybe there wasn't really a win condition, what we found was like, hey, you had certain resources that you exhausted for every move that you did, regardless of whether that move was a great move or a poor move. Like, you just got locked out after you exhausted all those resources. And for us, it was, hey, like, wouldn't it be great if the player got to dictate how long they wanted to consume your content, how long they wanted to play your game, right? So we employed sort of, I guess, a tried and true mechanic, right? It's sort of like that coin arcade mechanic. I grew up and playing like Miss Pac-Man and Street Fighter on those like coin-operated arcades. And my parents used to hate me for it because I used to always ask them for a change. But the great thing about that was that literally you put in a quarter or 50 cents or whatever it was, and you could play for as long as you had lives. And if you kept beating levels and kept beating people, you kept playing, right? And you only stopped playing when you lost, right? So it was, I guess, what I like to call sort of a merit system in many ways, right? So the game didn't physically lock you out. Like, can you imagine if Miss Pac-Man said, like, for every quarter you only got 4 levels regardless of what your score was? Like, that would probably suck, right? So it was important for us from a design standpoint to reward people positively and also let them know what was required for that reward, which was creating concrete win conditions. The second thing that we learned and wanted to implement from a design standpoint was really rethinking about what social meant in social games. We saw a lot of these games, and obviously, these games thrive with this virality and things like that, but we saw a lot of these games sort of starting to use this friend mechanism as almost like a resource you had to manage, right? And so how well or how enjoyable your game experience was in a lot of these games was dictated by how many neighbors or friends you had playing with you. And if you had like 2 or 3 people playing with you and you were playing against the neighbor who had like 200 people playing with him, right? Like, your experience was probably subpar to that person's, right? For us, when we thought about social, social is inherently baked into games, right? Like, if you think of, maybe besides solitaire, any game that you can think of, whether it be even a physical board game or whatever it is, it's inherently social, right? And the interactions that you have with social is not like just like a means to an end. It's sort of like that being able to play with each other, communicate with each other. It's sort of deeper than that. And so what we really strive to do with sort of the social layer around our Saga games was to create quality as opposed to quantity with sort of the social gaming. And you see it. I mean, it almost, you get people and you see them on the map. They're faces that you recognize. You see faces, your friends who are on the leaderboard. And because they're people that you know, you kind of just want to go and compete against them, to beat them, beat their score, and then brag about it. Like, that's the kind of interaction that we wanted social to have in our games, as opposed to just employing them to help you do stuff in the game. The third thing that we wanted to focus on was we wanted to make sure that the games were snackable and satisfying. And what I mean by this is we saw a lot of games out there where if you had like 3 minutes while you're waiting at the line at the grocery store, or you just like handed to your boss like that spreadsheet he's been like writing your ass about, and you just wanted to like take like a quick break to like unwind and play a game, you would go into some of these games on Facebook, and literally you would maybe like go purchase a building to place on your map. And you would place it there, and then it would tell you you would need to wait 15, 20 minutes, sometimes even 24 hours before you can actually use it, right? And by the time you went through all that actions, like, it was time to go and either check out or go to the next task at work. And it wasn't always that little period of time that you spent playing the game was satisfying. Sometimes it was kind of frustratingly mad. So it was important for us to create complete game experiences in a very short burst period of time, right? So you can literally go into a Saga game, spend 3 minutes, play maybe even a level or two, and have a positive experience because you could have passed those 2 levels, and then go about your day doing other things, right? So we wanted to make sure that the games were snackable and digestible in those small chunks, and those small chunks could be meaningful. And then the last thing was really just this strategy around playing wherever and whenever. There's been a lot of talk about cross-platform strategies and things like that. And when I first joined King and I was talking with our CEO, this is before we sort of jumped into Facebook, and we were considering it. One of the questions that I had asked him was, hey, what's going to really make us different? We're kind of late in the game. What's going to really make us different? And there was a vision at King of really being able to deliver a play experience that players can consume anywhere, anytime, whenever they wanted, multiple devices. And it was important that that progress was synchronized, right? The last thing you want is someone who's on level 250 on Facebook to then go download Candy Crush on their mobile and have to start from level 1 again, right? Like, they're not going to play your mobile game. So, for us, we invested heavily in tech, in the tech infrastructure to enable this. And that, at times we said, like this is a heavy investment. Is it going to work? Is it going to work? But it's proved that it does work. It does drive increased engagement, retention. People who play on our mobile devices now play twice as much as they would have done on Facebook. It literally now is playing whenever, wherever. And again, like I said, we'll synchronize your social graph, we'll synchronize your level progression, your in-game achievements, purchases, all of it. So that literally you go in and you feel like you just never left. And so just those are the 4 things, I think, in a nutshell, where we learned from our own mistakes of having tried to do stuff on Facebook. We've also learned from the goods and the bads that we saw in the marketplace. And again, having the advantage of being sort of a late entry into the Facebook or social gaming space. And those are the things that we were able to do to sort of craft this formula. And it would be premature for me to say that we've sort of figured it out. We certainly have not. And we continue to fine tune and iterate on what this Saga framework means. But we believe that we have now started to better triangulate towards a formula where we can create that thing that's going to sort of transcend that hit-driven nature of our business, which is sort of repeatable success. And that's it.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Do we have any questions for Jong? Why do you make Candy Crush so hard?
Why do we make it so hard?
Why'd you make it so hard? I mean, you talk about winning, and then you like kick my ass for 3 months on a level.
But do you come back and play?
No. Seriously, was that something that you discovered in your testing? Was that if you made these really super hard levels, that would just make winning that much sweeter?
It's not necessarily something we do in testing, but we do, sort of look at one of the things I think from the advantages that we have around sort of this level-based progression is that we can pinpoint exactly where people are stuck and for how long and all that kind of stuff. And The great thing about Facebook is that mobile doesn't always give you, particularly on iOS, is that you can iterate and A/B test like crazy on Facebook, right? So we can tweak levels on Facebook to sort of help people move beyond blockers. And if we find that, after doing something like that, that we're seeing, better progression with those players who used to be stuck, then we can take that and bring it over to mobile really easily.
We have time for one more question. Nope, here's one right in front.